Hello, my name is Malika Bruno, the parental accomplice, and I am bringing this information to you about combating pandemic learning loss. So let's start by defining learning loss first and foremost. What is learning loss? Loss of knowledge and skills or reversals in academic progress due to gaps or discontinuities in a student education. Now, by definition, that is what learning loss is. So you have a situation where your child is learning and growing and progressing in all of these different ways in their reading, writing, and math skills, social studies, and you may have an event or a situation where that learning stops and then that learning is not just stopped, but it's actually lost. So we have reversals in skills. So those skills that that child may have acquired, especially for our younger kiddos, when there's no repetition or when that learning stops, children tend to forget and lose those skills. So that basically is what learning loss is. All right, let's talk about COVID-19 and learning loss. So I know we've probably heard the term summer learning loss before, where if you're not continuing in learning some of or practicing your skills, you have students that lose those skills. And when students return to school, you have teachers that spend maybe about, I don't know, in between 3 to 6 weeks of reteaching those skills. Now, COVID-19 presents us with a very different situation. So it's something catastrophic that happened to all of us, right? So we had a situation where we had a pandemic and students could not return to school for an extended period of time. And if you just look at the information from state to state, that meant something totally different. We have some states that open back up at different times as other states. And you had some families that chose to return students to school, and some families that were either not comfortable at that time or just didn't return their students for quite a number of reasons. So, looking at the research, specifically Northwest Evaluation Association in America, their research is saying that one, we had a standstill, which it was basically called an academic melt. And that standstill became a slide. So now we have students going backwards in in their growth. So, that whole learning loss process actually happening nationwide. And so their forecast basically says that 70% of reading was lost during the pandemic. And for many students, all of their mathematics growth was lost. Realistically, we know that we have other factors that are integral in the whole learning loss process. So, looking at compounding existing gaps in education, we have disparities. We have certain groups of people and certain groups of students that are underrepresented, particularly in high achievement. And if you look at students of white versus Black and Hispanic heritage, you have Black and Hispanic students that are typically 2 years behind their counterparts. What are some of the ways that we can start to develop growth? We can't go backwards and change that the pandemic happened, because it did. And for many, this is something that we still have to deal with and will continue to have to deal with for quite some time. So let's look at the social and emotional wellness, which is a huge factor in combating the pandemic learning loss. So, social and emotional wellness can be a gateway to academic achievement. Social and emotional learning precedes academic achievement. Just think about it. If you are not emotionally and or socially and emotionally equipped to be in a learning environment, typically learning, it just will not happen. So for our kiddos, we need that safety and security to be present in order for that child to focus when they're meeting their teachers or whoever it is that's facilitating that instruction for the day. So safety and security starts at home. So we want to make sure that when we send our little ones out, we're sending them out in a mind frame where they are ready to receive that education in the first place. Now, with the pandemic, we had a lot of our kids that just didn't have the connectedness with other people. So we have families that did have siblings, and those siblings were still able to, socialize and play with each other. But we have situations where a lot of kiddos were home with their families and with no other children in the household. And being that you typically weren't outside socializing and playing with other kids and doing all these different things because the pandemic really had us at a shutdown, the connectedness really was not happening. And that is a very important piece for social emotional learning. So we have to think about that. So, connectedness with people during the pandemic really was a struggle. We had many students that were learning online, which gave that distance in between those students and their peers. Now, behavior and self management is very difficult when you don't have those SEL skills. For those that are continuing online, we have to be very creative in how we create our learning environments. It has to be engaging, it has to be fun, and we have to continue to help our students develop those skills needed in order for them to continue to progress in their academic environments. So, in terms of behavior and self management, we have to continue to have those conversations and read those cues and make sure that our students and our kids are having learning opportunities for self management so that when they're meeting their facilitators and teachers for academic instruction, that they are prepared to receive the information in a way that is conducive to learning. Now, how can we provide some of that support? What are some of the things that we need to be doing over the summer and throughout the year for enrichment? Reading is core for all subjects. When you have a child that is reading, and all of our students, all of our kids will be at different reading levels, even if you're in the same grade. It isn't to say that every single child picks up reading at the very same time, but early reading is helpful. And making sure that that reading development is showing growth is extremely important. So we want to have daily reading because reading is core for all subjects. And a child that reads well is typically more confident throughout their academic skills. So regardless of the topic or the specific instructions, those kids that are reading and getting help in their reading will often show more confidence in other subjects. Now, daily writing can look like for the older kids, we can do journaling, write stories. For the younger kids, sentence structure, using dictation, spelling, writing prompts. Those are different ways to provide academic support. And math skills, which I find that math with all of the different apps and all of the different online websites and the free worksheets. I mean, there's a plethora of information out there, even in the workbooks, that can help children along with their math skills. And I've seen workbooks where they will lay it out for you, where it's day one, work on this, day two, work on that. So, math really is something that can be practiced slowly, but that little bit of support really does make a difference when that child enters the classroom after the summer. Now, family games. Now, we want to make learning fun, right? So, playing games can be board games, puzzles, anything that will engage a child in a way that is fun, but uses those critical thinking skills, Scrabble and Pictionary, and just anything. You can play a game of Clue, even any board game. That really does exercise those thinking skills for the kiddos. Family outings, which is my favorite because I love excursions. You can go to museums, picnics in the park, and all of these different things do support your children academically because every outing can be used as a learning experience. For example, I remember my family and we went to a place called Assertique. It's, I believe, south of Ocean City, and they had a museum there, and they had the wild horses on the beach. It's a beachfront national park where they are wild horses. So not only were we able to have that experience and see wild horses roaming around in the beach and driving through the park and walking through the beach and all of these different things, but the museums had information on the origination of the park. What is a wild horse? What do they do? How did they become wild horses? You know, there's so many different ways that you can turn a family excursion into an actual learning experience. So that is the end of um, this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you feel encouraged. And as we move forward and tackle the pandemic and just try to avoid as much as that learning loss as possible. Thank you, and you enjoy the rest of your day.